Interesting.
Wow.
Can you explain what the Shemitah cycle is for those who may not be familiar with that term?
Okay, so God has a time clock, and we need to understand, just like a grandfather's clock has gears to keep us on God's timetable, we need to know God's appointed times, and we need to, we're his servants. So he doesn't come at our beck and call, we're to come at his beck and call. And so within the gears of this grandfather's clock, so to speak, we have the weekly gears of the Shabbat, the monthly gear of the new moons. We have the yearly festivals like Passover, Pentecost. All of these are known as the Moedim, or appointed times. So then we have the yearly gears of the Moedim. But then we have the seventh year of the seventh year cycle, which is called the Shemitah. And then every 50th year is the year of Jubilee. Now, one thing I want to point out, this is going to set this program up. We are right now in the year 5781. This coming Rosh Hashanah begins the year 5782. So their calendar is different than ours. But let me show you this, Jim. This will be very, I think, significant to you individually as well. But look at this. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 1 through 2, God says, when all these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I've set before you, and you call them to mind among all the nations where the Lord your God has driven you, and you return to the Lord your God, you and your children, you obey his voice and all that I command you today with all your heart, with all your soul. Look what happens in Deuteronomy 30, verse 3. It says, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes. He'll have mercy on you. He will gather you again from all the nations or the people where the Lord your God has scattered you. Do you know this is the 5,708th verse of the Bible? Well, guess what? That also was the year 1948. The year 5708 on the Hebrew calendar was our 1948, and this very verse was fulfilled that year.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
powerful.
But let me go back to the PowerPoint. Let me just show you now the answer to your question. I want you to see this. What I made here, and this is what blew me away. I'm telling you, this is going to rock everybody's world. I took 70 years. I have 10 Shemitah cycles, so everyone can know where we're at. Going horizontally, you can see the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh year. 1966, 1967 was the Hebrew year 5727. And it was right then when the 4 blood moons appeared, when they recaptured Jerusalem at the 6-day war. And then you go to the right, you see the 7th year was 1972, 1973, which was the year 5733. Now people ask, how do I know that's a Shemitah year? It's so simple. The Hebrew year is divisible by 7. It's that easy. And so look at the next 7-year cycle. So many people focus on the Shemitah year. You really need to focus on the first year of every Shemitah cycle. Look at 73, 74. You have the Yom Kippur War. Look at 1980-81. You have the Israeli jets destroy the Iraq nuclear reactor. So I'm going to go across and watch what happens here. Here, 1987, 1988 was the first Intifada. 1994, 1995, this is incredible. This was when Israel entered a peace treaty with Jordan. That was the year 5755. Guess what? The Bible verse for that year is Deuteronomy 31:30, which begins the song of Moses that's sung in the book of Revelation. So this is powerful. God did not want them creating a covenant with the foreign nations. And then that brings us to 2001, 2002. That's Operation Defensive Shield. It's the second Intifada. And guess what happened in 2001, 2002? That's when the quartet was established. Okay, that's the United Nations, the EU, the United States, and Russia. They decide in 2001 and 2002 that Israel needs to be divided and a Palestinian state needs to be created. And then lastly on this slide is 2008, 2009, which is the Gaza war, the stock market crash. Okay, now hold your seats. Here comes the mind-blowing one. First off, 2015, 2016, again, set off by the 4 blood moons. What is the meaning of these 4 blood moons in 48, in 67, in 2014, 2015? I believe these eclipses were a warning of what will be coming even 7 years later. And here's what I mean by that. Look what happens right now. If you look at that chart, we are at 2020, 2021, which is the year 5781. So that is the 6th year of a 7-year cycle, which means this Rosh Hashanah, we begin the 7th year. Next Rosh Hashanah is the key critical date everyone needs to write down, because 2022, 2023, Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of a new 7-year cycle. Now, let me explain to you the phenomenal part of this. I believe every one of your audience knows about Daniel's 70 weeks and how there's 1 week of 7 years left, right? Does everybody realize that? Well, guess what? If that's the case, we have to remember Daniel was Jewish. And the whole thing about the Shemitah cycle, they went into captivity because they did not honor the Shemitah year. And so the Shemitah cycle is very important to God. So are you ready to write this down? You got to get a hold of this. Because God is on his own calendar, the 7-year tribulation cannot start anytime randomly. The 7-year tribulation, because there's 1 week left, has to begin the beginning of a 7-year cycle. So if you look at this calendar, the beginning of the next 7-year cycle is a year from now, on Rosh Hashanah 2022, 2023. Now, if the tribulation does not begin then, it can't begin until 2029 or 2030. And if not then, it can't begin until 7 years later, 2036, 2037. So that's the first thing I want people to understand. The tribulation cannot be any moment. That week is a Shemitah week, and it has to begin the first year of a Shemitah cycle.